And the thing about geopolitics, and people wonder, like, how can you really be able to do geopolitics and understand these political events? They're just very confusing. And let me share with you 3 principles that will help you be able to do geopolitics. And geopolitics is not a science. It's a lot of prediction. It's a lot of uncertainty. There's the fog of war. You don't have all the information. But there are certain things that are important to keep in mind. One is always consistency. You have to be consistent. When you have a position that you take a position based on principles and then be consistent with those principles. That's number 1. Number 2, understand everyone's interests. What are the interests of the US, of Israel, of the Gulf states, of Iran, of Hezbollah, of Russia, China? What are the interests of all the powers involved? That's number 2. And number 3, you have to, number 3, lost my train of thought. You have to understand everyone's interests. You have to be consistent. And I lost my train of thought. But I'll come to the number 3 in a second. So this is what I posted initially. I was immediately... number 3. Remember history. Remember recent history. I had a brain malfunction. Remember recent history. So the thing about the Middle East is we know the whole Syrian revolution came about because of the Arab Spring. And a lot of people, I feel, that are so enthusiastic about these rebels is that they weren't old enough to remember. Maybe some of them weren't even born. Honestly, like given the level of some of these Twitter commentators, they weren't even born in the Arab Spring in 2011. If you remember the Arab Spring, the excitement that we had for the regime change in Egypt, the protesters were able to depose Mubarak, Hosni Mubarak. In Tunisia, Ben Ali was deposed as well. You had this potential for Assad to be deposed. There were popular protests. There was way more enthusiasm. Like, you think now people are psyched about a Sunni revival? You don't have no clue in 2011 how much excitement there was. And then that excitement continued with Mohamed Morsi winning the election by a small margin. There was so much excitement that this is a new age for the Middle East. And finally, we have gotten past the age of brutal tyrants and dictators. Then what happened? Like, compare the excitement at that time to the excitement now. The excitement then was 1,000 times more. Even the excitement with the Taliban 3 years ago. The excitement with the Taliban taking over and kicking out the US, that was even more excitement than now. But when it comes to the Arab Spring, we had so much excitement, 1,000 more excitement and optimism than people are having now. And then look how it turned out. Look how it turned out, how quickly the situation was turned against Sunnis, turned against the kind of independence from the US and Israel. And we'll discuss like how that happens, because those details are important, because the same exact playbook is now being used against the Syrian factions that have now taken power. So just noting that pattern, noting that history, that's a huge part of doing any kind of competent geopolitics. But asking those questions and doing that analysis and noticing patterns over time, over the decades, doesn't mean that you support Assad. Doesn't mean that you support his brutal regime. And I know that there are Assadists. I know that there are these trolls. So like a idiot like Jackson Hinkle, okay, who is just, I don't understand why. Like, is he literally being, like, I thought that he's being paid by Russia. But even Russia is not standing by Assad. Even Russia doesn't have that kind of position. So what is he talking about? Or like this Syrian girl, or some of these white nationalists that have been pro-Palestine or anti-Israel, and now they're like simping for Assad. Like, that's completely moronic as well. And I had like a tweet on this. Like, one side says, if you don't have 100% certainty that the rebels are rightly guided heroes that will bring an Islamic golden age to Syria, then you're an Assadist, Kafir, Iranian agent, Majusi, Murtad. The other side says, if you don't believe Assad is the chosen one who's single-handedly holding back Israel from wiping out the entire world, then you're an ISIS-loving Zionist who enjoys the sight of Palestinian babies suffering. Don't waste your time arguing with these morons. So both sides are insufferable. Both sides are just so ideological and so blinded by partisanship that you can't even have a conversation. They're just going to keep spamming. And I think a lot of them are literally just bots. Like, if you look at my replies, you see a very clear pattern. It's accounts that are anonymous accounts, obviously, and they have about 100 to 300 or 400 followers, and they all say the same thing. They all spam the same thing. Oh, you're an Assadist. Oh, you're this, you're that. So this is completely irrational. We can be anti-Assad and be happy that he's been deposed, while also being realistic and understanding the dangers and the threats that are imminently present in Syria, given the situation with the power vacuum that's been created. And the biggest enemies of Muslims, and Sunnis in particular, are taking pure advantage of the situation. And you have to be, and to say, if someone comes and ignores that reality and says, no, 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 we have to focus on how you're an Assadist and how the Shia are the biggest threat. Someone who says that, that's a huge red flag. Like, I would think that maybe this is an agent. Like, maybe this is Unit 8200 out of Tel Aviv, or one of their influencer agents. The other way is that they create economic hardship in order to discredit Sunni Islamist groups like Ikhwan. So if you look at Egypt, what happened in Egypt when Morsi took power and he won the election? You had all of these corrupt politicians who were sabotaging the country economically. They literally were turning off the electricity. They were shutting off the gas. You had all this foreign investment leave Egypt. You had sanctions that were coming from Egypt. You had the Gulf countries specifically pull out all of their funding. Saudi and the UAE pulling out their funding out of Egypt. Why are they doing this? They want to create an economic crisis so that the population becomes dissatisfied and says, see, when we back Muslim government, Islamist Muslim government like the Ikhwan, like Mohammed Morsi, we suffer economically. We fall into poverty. The same exact thing happened in Gaza. When in 2006, the Palestinians elected a Hamas government, what did Israel do? They blockaded Gaza. They blockaded Gaza in order to cause a financial collapse. The whole purpose of this is to turn the population internally against the Hamas government. Same thing happening in Iran. Like, that's always been the US policy in Iran, for Iran. Rather than an all-out invasion, we should cause a color revolution by sanctioning Iran, causing poverty, causing economic hardship. Then there will be an internal revolution and hopefully civil war. That's their game plan. So HGS has to be very cognizant of this fact. Like, these rebels who have taken power, they are also Islamist. They are Sunni Islamists. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think? The playbook is all there. And anyone, if they don't take steps to block this kind of development, it's going to be a huge red flag. Like, well, maybe you're just incompetent, or you're compromised.